Hey everybody, this is JDGaming back today with an in-depth introduction to Evil Twins. Now, on the surface, I thought this deck was going to be pretty complicated when I first took a look at it, but it turns out once you get the hang of things, it's actually quite simple, and yet there's a lot of fun to be had with it. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. And kind of like building a deck, we're going to start off with the core of the theme. We're starting off with our first duo of live twin monsters, ki-sikil and 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊. Now, you may be thinking, JD, I thought you were saying evil twin deck? Why are you talking about live twins? Basically, it is not a visual pun as I found out. Fun fact, this term is actually a 𝕮𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓. It's literally the word palindrome backwards, and it's when you have a word like live that when spelled backwards becomes another word, evil in this case. So you're starting with these VTuber, virtual pop star kind of personalities in the main deck, and then turning them into their Phantom Thief, more trickster extra deck counterparts. So very fun theme visually and thematically, but what are we basically doing here? You're starting with 3 copies of one red and one blue tour guide from the underworld. On normal or special summon, if you control no other monsters, you can special summon the opposite named twin from your hand or deck as a hard once per turn. And then as a bonus, it's not something you'd build around, but each of these twins has an effect that doesn't even activate. It's kind of a condition or continuous effect that's placed on your opponent. If they attack into you and you have one or both of these, your opponent is either going to give you 500 life points for ki-sikil or pay 500 life points if you control 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊. So again, not something you're building around, but this deck actually has monsters that have 4,400 attack and 3,300 attack. Both of those attack, that's 7,700. That 500 actually can make or break you in some instances, so it's good to keep in mind if you plan on playing this deck to any degree. As if that weren't enough, now we're going to find 3 copies of Fire Formation Tenki to search our tour guides. The continuous spell Live Twin Sunny Snitch on play lets you add a live twin monster from your deck to your hand, and although you can only activate one per turn, you're allowed to control up to the 3 copies if you keep playing them turn after turn. And it may actually benefit you if you do, because if you control an evil twin monster, each of your opponent's normal or special summons, instances at least, will give you 200 life points, literally from them. They're going to take 200 damage as well. And again, that 7,700 damage is possible in this deck, which means doing that extra 300 through just a couple burns of this is going to win you the game from that as well. But wait, there's more. Yo dog, I heard you like your searches, so we gave a searcher for your search so you can search your searches and then keep searching. Secret Password is a normal spell that's basically a rota for your live twin or evil twin spell or trap cards, and although there are some traps, I'll get to them shortly, you're basically only caring about the last spell and the next spell. If you happen to have both a ki-sikil and a 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓 in some form on your field, you can choose to search your evil twin monster from your deck to your hand, but as of now there's only one card that fits the bill, and while you may want to know that this is a possibility, you're not going to do it most of the time. And speaking of those backup options, Live Twin Home is a quick play spell that I usually like playing 1 copy of. It lets you discard a card to special summon either a ki-sikil or 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓 from your deck, but for the rest of the turn, you can't summon anything from your extra deck that is not an evil twin monster. And considering we'll get to the fact that the extra deck monsters are going to lock you into fiends, you don't have a lot to work with when you're literally stuck with just the evil twin theme. It's not that this card is useless, it's just really there as a backup for another name for Secret Password in case things go really bad, and there are some other instances where just bringing out a free monster can help you win the game. So definitely worth playing at least the 1 copy of, but I used to play around with 3 of it until I realized I just don't like getting this too often. I just want the 1 copy, which is basically 4 when you factor in the secret passwords. Now that we've got our main core, which you can probably see is going to be quite consistent and robust, we're going to go and add 2 extenders to the list. ki-sikil Frost and 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓 Treat are able to summon themselves from your hand once per turn as long as you control the opposite named twin, and they have a bonus effect if they're in your graveyard while you control an evil twin monster, which of course is going to usually be one of your extra deck monsters. A quick glance at these 2 will probably show you that Frost is better than Treat 9 times out of 10, and that's because she lets you draw when your opponent adds a card from their deck to their hand during either turn, which is a very powerful effect in Yu-Gi-Oh! Treat isn't to be underestimated though. If either player takes battle damage, you're able to banish her in order to weaken one of your opponent's monsters by the damage that was taken, and that can be used either defensively to soften your opponent's further blows, or offensively to reduce one of your opponent's attacks and then basically do the same battle damage you just did again through one of their weakened monsters. Realistically though, both of these are bonus effects, and you're playing at least one copy of each because it's just so flexible to have a free drop of each name in your deck, especially when you consider all the cards from before can work with these two monsters like they can with their original counterparts. For completeness though, I do want to bring up the idea that this means the original 𝕿𝖆𝖊𝖙𝖊𝖓 is actually better than ki-sikil in a lot of situations because she can fetch Frost, which will then get you a draw usually during your opponent's turn. Now that we've talked about most of the important cards in the core, it's time to start talking about the Link 2s, starting with the evil twin versions of ki-sikil and 𝕿𝖆𝖊𝖏. Much like the original live twin counterparts, these evil twins have a theme where ki-sikil is going to grant you resources and 𝕿𝖆𝖊𝖏 is going to take away resources from your opponent. Specifically, if you summon these monsters while you control one of the opposite name, and it could be anything, evil, live, whatever, you're able to either draw a card off of ki-sikil or target and destroy one of your opponent's cards with 𝕿𝖆𝖏𝖏. To help ensure that you get these effects off, they each have a quick effect during either main phase that lets you summon the opposite monster from your graveyard as long as you don't already control a monster with that name. That does mean it's important to not just drop your extenders we mentioned willy-nilly, because if you do, you could lock yourself out of a potential revive for a Link 2 monster that would then gain its effect. Regardless of which monster you bring back, you end up being locked into fiend monsters from your extra deck for the rest of the turn, which is why I like to say it's easier to play something like Evil Twins in Sprite than to do the reverse and play something else in Evil Twins, unless they happen to be fiend monsters as well. I'll do a quick combo tutorial of some basics at the end of this video, but for right now, just remember for later that whichever twin you summon first from your extra deck is the one you will get the effect for if you are making your first turn of the game. Before we can consider that, we need to take a look at the last two key cards in this theme, starting with the Link 4 monster Evil Twins 𝕿𝖆𝖏𝖏𝖏𝖏. This card's Compass Rose arrows makes it very easy to co-link, and it's very easy to bring out with any two or more monsters, including at least one Evil Twin. Once you have this dastardly duo on your field, you have a quick effect that lets you tribute this card to special summon up to one ki-sikil monster and up to one 𝕿𝖆𝖏𝖏 monster from your graveyard. It's worded this way so that you get to choose at resolution which one you would like to do, so you don't have to worry about your opponent hitting one of your monsters with Called by the Grave. You can just summon back little 𝕿𝖆𝖏𝖏 if your big one gets hit, for example. Because this monster has 3300 attack and that quick effect can be used even during your turn, it's very easy to attack with this monster, then tribute it, summon both monsters, trigger each twin if you have not already used their effects, getting a draw or a pop, and then being able to attack for another 2200 damage before Link climbing into another copy of 𝕿𝖆𝖏𝖏𝖏 during your main phase 2. Any copies of 𝕿𝖆𝖏𝖏𝖏 that end up in the graveyard are also useful because you can banish it from the graveyard during your turn and send one Evil Twin monster from your hand, deck, or face-up field to the graveyard, we'll talk about options here in a second, in order to send one card from the field to the graveyard at resolution without targeting. This is a very powerful ability that lets you get rid of floodgates or out troublesome monsters in what's usually a very safe way, and although you can use this effect by sending one of your Link 2 twins to the graveyard, which would let you then use the other one's effect to revive and then trigger the one you sent to the graveyard, this is the perfect time now to discuss the last piece of our deck, the one brick Evil Twins ki-sikil and 𝕿𝖆𝖏𝖏𝖏 of the main deck. This level 8 monster cannot be normal summoned or set and has a special summon requirement that can be used from the hand or graveyard by tributing any two Link monsters you control regardless of their Link rating. Then as a bonus that I've literally only used like once or twice in the months that I've been playing this deck, if your opponent has 3 or more cards when you summon the twins, you're able to force them to send cards to the graveyard until they only have 2, which is kind of like a weird evenly matched deal. What comes up a lot more often is that if you have both a ki-sikil and a 𝕿𝖆𝖏𝖏𝖏 monster in your graveyard, this monster's attack is effectively doubled to 4400, which when paired with 𝕿𝖆𝖏𝖏𝖏𝖏's 3300 gets you to that sweet spot of just needing to do 300 damage to win the game. Before talking about some tech and other interesting considerations, I do want to spend a moment just going through the remaining cards and my thoughts on them. The Field Spell Live Twin channel is just too gimmicky to be useful. It lets you do a weird battle trick and then recycle some of your cards, which, yeah, could be useful if they were attached to some other effects like Sunny Snitch's bonus effect, but realistically, you're not going to want to play this for anything because it doesn't advance your game state. That said, this card's artwork is my favorite among the Live Twin cards because it has so much fun Easter egg kind of content in what looks like their own Nico Nico Doga channel. Lil-La rap is so new, it's not even out in the OCG yet, and although it's kind of cool that it was released with that kind of spicy alternate art of 𝕿𝖆𝖏𝖏𝖏, it's just not a very good card. It literally isn't even a card in this archetype, it's not searchable, much like a lot of the other cards in this OCG set, and realistically I just don't see any reason where you would play this. For traps, Evil Twin Present has a couple of interesting but very situational effects if you control a ki-sikil and a 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊 monster. The first effect basically allows you to force a creature swap or do basically a psychic jumper effect on your opponent's monsters, but the problem is, if you give your own twin to your opponent without a way to get rid of it, you've given your opponent a hostage that is going to screw you over. The other option has kind of a weird Nightmare Unicorn effect, but it only works on set spell and trap cards, which can be useful if your opponent doesn't chain it, but you can just play Unicorn with all the co-linking you do in this deck. You don't need to play this trap card, even if it's searchable by secret password. Evil Twin 𝕮𝖓𝖊𝖓𝖙 is a continuous trap with a wonderfully dated name that allows you to tribute either a ki-sikil or 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊 monster to activate, again, a choice of 2 effects. You can either target a ki-sikil or 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊 that you control to have it gain attack equal to the original monster of the one you just tributed, which only gives it 1100 unless you get rid of the 2200 attack twin monster. But even then, that attack boost only lasts until the end of the turn, and with it being a trap card, you're going to be very hard pressed to find a situation where even secret password can get you this thing fast enough for it to actually end the game in your favor. Don't get me wrong, getting rid of your twins as a quick effect is a very powerful effect. I'm literally enemy controller here, and you know that's going to make a mention at some point in this video. But this trap card, even if searchable, just isn't the best option for you. The second effect doesn't even really grant you the flexibility of getting rid of your monster at any time, because if your opponent is trying to destroy a card on the field, unless you're somehow trying to negate your own effect, you can negate a destruction effect, which is just too situational. It could come up and be useful in a rare instance, but again, just think of the fact that this is a trap card. It's not going to be useful most of the time. The last card is the one that I think has the most potential, Evil Twin Challenge, a normal trap that lets you target a ki-sikil or 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊 in your grave of any form, special summon it, and then immediately after this resolves, link summon one Evil Twin Link monster using monsters you control as material. The problem with this card is it was designed at a time when 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊 and the new support didn't exist. Nowadays, you can just go and summon out your 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑 who will set up your 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑 and ki-sikil for both of their effects, whereas this card looks like it was designed at a time where it was trying to end you on one of the Link 2s. This thing is way too restrictive these days, and you could have always played IP Masquerena in the first place, and again, even though it's searchable, it's a trap card, which means although they could have some really niche interactions, it's just way too slow and narrow in scope to be useful in most situations. Did I mention the artwork in this archetype is phenomenal? Next up, we're going to leverage all the information we've discussed so far to make the basic bread and butter combos for the Evil Twins in their current incarnation, and then we can add some suggestions for things you can do to flesh out the rest of the deck based on your preferences. The combo starts literally with just a normal summon of one of your 2 basic live twin monsters. Ideally, you want to summon your 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊 if you have it so that you're able to summon out ki-sikil Frost from your deck. It doesn't matter which ki-sikil you bring out other than the fact that you will get a free draw if of course you go for that extender. From there, you're able to link the 2 of them together using ki-sikil Frost's name as the ki-sikil monster to summon your Evil Twin ki-sikil Link 2 first, who will then activate her effect to bring back your 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊 from the graveyard. Do note here that because the Evil Twin Link 2 and 4 monsters have a quick effect for their abilities, you can actually chain to your opponent's mistimed Called by the Grave, 𝕿𝖇 or other hand trap if they're not familiar with this theme. From there, you have a total of 3 link ratings, and although it looks kind of wasteful to do this, without any other cards from our hand, we're going to turn our monsters, now using 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊's name, to summon out our Evil Twin 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊, who will then activate her effect to bring back the Link 2 ki-sikil. Since ki-sikil is summoned while we control a 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊 monster at this point in the combo, we will be able to activate her effect to draw 1 card for free, meaning we replace the 1 card we started the entire sequence with. You can then combine both of the Link 2 monsters in order to climb up into our Link 4 Evil Twin 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊 which has that quick effect that we can use during our opponent's turn to summon back 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊 and ki-sikil. You want to realize that if you chain your 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊's effect to one of your opponent's cards, 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖊's effect won't resolve until the next chain, and so you can't use it on something like a field spell or continuous spell that you absolutely must get rid of immediately, so do be careful about the timing to make sure you knock out the cards that you wish to kill. When I resolve both of the Evil Twins at the same time off of 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊, I like using ki-sikil as chain link 1 and 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖊 as chain link 2 to target something and destroy. That way, I chain block to protect ki-sikil from Ash Blossom. In the ideal case, you would end up with at least 1 twin surviving into the next turn, and that is somewhat likely depending on whether or not your opponent can muster enough attack force to get rid of your board, because both of these monsters will still have their quick effects to revive the other during either of the main phases. From there, you can use the remaining monster to revive the other one at the beginning of your turn in order to get a free advantage effect, or you can go ahead and just use the entire play sequence again if your board was cleared, because all you need to do is normal summon one of your live twins to get the combo started once again. And the last comment I have for the basic combo is just that if you want to go and pop one of your opponent's cards, because let's say you want second, you just have to summon your evil twin 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊 first in the combo sequence, because remember what I said earlier, the first extra deck evil twin monster you summon in this combo sequence is the one whose effect you will end up claiming based on how their effects work. The only reason I opted to show this specific way is because by using ki-sikil, you're able to draw a card regardless of what turn it is in the game and what the opponent's board looks like, whereas 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊 does require your opponent to have something in order to get that resource advantage by taking something away from them. If you're seeing this video, there's a very good chance that there's going to be at least one Let's Build deck profile that I have somewhere on my channel with this theme, and depending on when you're seeing it, maybe it's going to be multiple over a long period of time. But for right now, I do want to talk about a few key considerations for different techs and just things you want to keep in mind with this deck in terms of what works well in terms of synergy. The first consideration actually doesn't even introduce any new cards. If I happen to have access to either Secret Passcode or Live Twin Sunny Snitch directly, I will usually opt to normal summon the original 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊 or ki-sikil first in case the opponent decides to try to hit me with something like Ash Blossom. That way, I can always resolve the spell or spells in order to fetch the opposite twin from my deck, and then the extender can go and summon itself for free to allow me to do the entire combo sequence I just explained while your opponent is down that Ash Blossom. You may notice that Live Twin Home can be used for the same effect, but you do end up losing one more card that you discard, which is probably going to hurt unless you just discarded twins that you can get back at any time later, and you're probably not going to be able to do any of the other combos that the deck is capable of depending on what else you flesh out your main and extra decks with. If your opponent decides to use some kind of effect negation like Effect Failure or Imperm that targets your monster instead of Ash Blossom, you actually have some additional options if you happen to be going second and your opponent has a board. Quick play spells like Enemy Controller and Forbidden Droplet have the ability to get rid of your monsters, which will allow you to make sure your on-field effects work without getting negated by those cards. In addition, they have some interesting bonuses. Enemy Controller is able to steal one of your opponent's monsters, and because you'll still be able to resolve the initial twin to summon out a second, and the materials for your Link 2s just need any two monsters including one twin, you can still do all the combos through the disruption using Enemy Controller. Forbidden Droplet also gets a shout out for being a really weird case where you end up with no monster on your field other than the new twin you just summoned, which will then allow you to trigger that other twin as long as you summoned one of the original pair. Cards like Crossout Designator and Called by the Grave can also be used to stop hand traps as well, and the first one can actually be used very well in this deck because with a one-card combo deck like this, you can load it up with so many different hand traps, you can pretty much stop everything that your opponent throws at you to trouble your sunny days. If that's not enough, you can add to your roster of extenders by playing cards like Parallel Exceed or Backup Secretary. Depending on the route you go, you can add monsters that are Cybers type, or in the case of Parallel Exceed, toolbox options like Abyss Dweller or Bagooska. Both of these options are Cybers monsters, which allows you to take advantage of two monsters that I'm personally using right now, Link Disciple and Link Devotee. Even without them, you get a very powerful first turn combo sequence that I'll demonstrate here. You basically summon out one of your original Cybers twins in order to summon out the other Cybers twin because you need to have a Cybers monster. Of course, if you have the extenders I just mentioned, you can go ahead and use those as a second Cybers monster for this play, but I'm just going to do it in deck within the core. Once you have those out, you'll just need to have access to one of the Live Twin extenders, Frost or Treat, in order to be able to make one of your Link 2 evil twins down the line. You use your two Cybers monsters in order to link summon Link Disciple first, and then Link Devotee right beneath it. This will activate the mandatory trigger effect of Link Devotee, which will then lock you out of Link 3 and higher monsters for the rest of the turn. But if you're playing on something like Master Duel and your opponent's not paying attention, they could waste a hand trap on this thing activating, which could actually benefit you. Now we activate the effect of Link Disciple to tribute the Link Devotee it's pointing at, which will allow us to draw one card and then put any one card in our hand back at the bottom of the deck to make it stronger. On top of that, this tributing triggers the effect of Link Devotee, which summons out two token monsters to our field that you can immediately use to summon IP Masquerena under the Link Disciple. From here, we're going to utilize the spent Link Disciple along with whichever Live Twin extender we were able to bring out in order to bring out that corresponding Link 2. Ideally here you would have Frost, again because ki-sikil gets you a draw and then the Frost in the Grave will get you the free draw, but either way you're able to use this combo regardless of which one you have as an extender. Do realize that because these extenders have to be played when you control the opposite evil twin, you must have played this extender before you go for the Link, Disciple, and Devotee play. The rest of the combo plays out exactly the same, and you will end up on a board of ki-sikil, 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊, and IP Masquerena all on the field. I generally only do this combo if I'm going first because the Link Devotee locking us away from our Link 3 and higher plays does make this very powerless during our first turn. However, setting up into our opponent's turn now, your opponent gets the first action during the main phase to play a card, and if it's not something that's going to stop you like a super polymerization, you can now, at any time you find appropriate, chain IP Masquerena using itself along with the 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊 as 2 materials each to summon out the Link 4 Unchained Abomination. This card is a fiend, which means it's fair game for use in the Evil Twin strategy, and it basically has effects that lets you pop a card if something else gets popped, pop a card when a card dies in battle either way, and then just pop a card for free in the end phase for 3 total pops in a turn. What we've basically set up here is a monster that, thanks to IP Masquerena, cannot be destroyed by card effects, and if you use ki-sikil's effect to bring back 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊 later in the turn, you're able to use 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊's effect to target and pop a card, then Unchained Abomination will trigger in a new chain to target and pop another card. Then, in the end phase, if your opponent's trying to set back row because their play's been disrupted, you can pop yet another card. This card gives you a ton of ways to snowball advantage for the rest of the game, which will usually lead to a very quick win, and in the case your opponent tries to stop your IP Masquerena with something like Raigeki or Lightning Storm, you can use IP Masquerena's effect to your advantage, going for something like Trouble Sunny who can shrug off the destruction effect, and then from there you've basically set up the same Evil Twin combo that you've done in the earlier part of the video. Some other considerations for monsters you can play with this line are the Nightmare monsters. Griffin can be used to recycle one of your cards, as well as lock out either player from activating special summon monsters' effects if they are not being pointed to or pointing at a Link monster. And good old Nightmare Griffin is exceptionally powerful in this deck because it's so easy to co-link it with all of your main monsters, allowing you to recoup the loss of the discard with a free draw. And while there are plenty of different ways you can hybridize the twins with other decks in order to make some really cool strategies, and probably other tech cards I've yet to explore, I did want to end off this discussion with a suite of very powerful monsters that you want to play in your extra deck. Because this deck focuses on a pair of level 2 monsters that summon out more level 2 monsters, it's exceptionally easy to Xyz summon the rank 2 Sky Cavalry Centauria, who cannot be destroyed by battle while it has material, so it can safely attack one of your opponent's monsters. Although he has a rather powerful effect that lets you detach a material to bounce a card to the opponent's hand, you're not going to want to use that effect. Save that material, because in main phase 2 you can overlay it for Downward Magician, and then on top of her you can play Divine Arsenal 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊 Zeus Sky Thunder. I think that may be the first time I've said this card's whole name, but you know the drill. Summon this Zeus with 4 materials, now even twice in a chain if you have to. You can go and detach 2 materials at a time to make sure you can clear the board, and sometimes you get the full effect of it multiple times. Because of how consistent the Xyz package is, I'd be very hard pressed to find another 3 cards that are better than this package, and it really may take like Zeus getting banned or some other crazy power creep for me to consider something else instead of these 3 cards in the extra deck. And that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about right now for our in-depth introduction to Evil Twins. I don't think I'm the best player with twins in any stretch of the imagination, but I've had a lot of fun over the last few months, playing them as kind of my main deck in Master Duel and kind of getting used to a new era of my life where I'm not able to play as much Yu-Gi-Oh! IRL as I once did, but you know, as you keep living, different things happen. We'll see how things go from here. That's it for now, but feel free to grab one of these videos on your way out. If you really enjoyed what you saw today, remember to subscribe to JD Gaming for more Yu-Gi-Oh! Videos. Thanks guys, this is JD Gaming, hope you guys enjoyed as always, and I'll see you guys next time.